Welcome in to Rick and Bubba University, the podcast. Hello, it's your professors at Rick and Bubba University. Oh, Rick and Bubba here, handing out degrees in common sense. That, of course, Bubba now a superpower. In this episode, this is going to be a tough topic, but it's important. And Bubba, you and I over the years on the main show, it seems like almost periodically, we just had it in the last couple of weeks, somebody calls up and they say, hey, I'm working on my faith. I know that Scripture tells me that I'm to honor my mother and father, but I have a hard time with that because you don't know what I went through or the type of mother and father that I have, and I don't know what that looks like. And you and I have tried to help with that and talk about what the Bible says about honoring your parents. That doesn't mean that what they did is okay. It doesn't mean that you
blindly follow.
Or blindly any of that. You're just living in such a way that it would bring honor to your parents no matter who they are. Well, this is a very serious topic, and it seems to, when you look at what Patrick Morley and the research he's done, the new book is called From Broken Boy to Mended Man. Now, I don't want the women in the audience to now turn off the podcast. We're going to be talking about the effects this is having on men, but we know there are women watching and listening to this, and this is still would be a good read for you too, who have been through the same thing. You had a very dysfunctional home, and you have wounds from that maybe you've dealt with, maybe you haven't. Well, Patrick Morley is joining us on this edition of Rick and Bubba University, the podcast. Patrick, thank you for taking time to be with us.
Well, and thank you for having me. It's an honor. Of course, I'm a big fan of yours, a big fan of all the Birmingham things that are going on. And, we have family there and kind of like almost a second home. So
thanks, man.
Really good to be with you.
And Patrick, nice headphones too.
Yeah,
I like
good.
those.
Yeah, that looks
great.
great.
You like those?
Yeah,
huh?
that's like
I'm
professional.
trying to keep up with you guys.
Well, I do want to also just have this opportunity because when we talked, I've never been able to follow up. If I did, I'm glad I did. If I didn't, I was remiss. But, when you wrote Man in the Mirror, I read that when I felt God calling us to men's ministry and that I was going to do men's ministry in my local church. And it really, I'm going to overly simplify the book, but the thing that really stuck out in the book is that we keep treating men's ministry like we're treating symptoms. As successful as Promise Keepers was, they said the same thing. We thought we were just supposed to challenge men, give them an encounter with God and these great worship experiences. They would go back into the church and then they would be discipled. And he said, and I talked to Ken Harrison about that, who's relaunched it, and he said we were sadly mistaken. The church hasn't done a good job of treating the disease, and that is to actually equip and disciple men. And your book had such an impact on me that sitting here in 2024, we went on to create themanchurch.com that took that issue of treating the disease and began to create and produce curriculum for men's small groups. And I want you to know that your impact writing that book, there are thousands of churches that are using these curriculum all over the country, and your book is what inspired us to take that initiative. So that impact you share in. So I just want to say thank you for that.
Well, thank you for that, and to God be the glory, right?
Amen.
I mean, there is one men's ministry, and it belongs to God.
That's right. That's it. So, but one of the problems we face with men is what you're taking on in this book is, and I was blown away that the latest research is showing us right now that 70 to 80% of American homes are run by dysfunctional parents. The house is dysfunctional, 70 to 80%.
Well, the country is dysfunctional, so that would be somewhere along the line we have to trace that back, right?
And Patrick, I'm going to let you tell your own story, but I'll set it up for you reading over the book. You are able to speak to this because when your mother died her earthly death, you knew something was wrong because you didn't have any emotion. It's like you didn't even know what to do. You didn't feel anything. And this kind of led to a journey that led to the book. So tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, that is a nice place to start, which is kind of like at the apex or the central point when discovery came about. I was already in a healing process. But when I was 53 years of age, my mother died. I didn't feel anything. I wasn't sad. I didn't cry. I didn't miss her. I thought that was pretty strange, and so I made an appointment with a counselor who helped me to put into words the father and mother wounds that I had never been able to articulate. So I grew up in a home where we did not have verbal affection. I never heard the words "I love you" or "I'm proud of you." My parents were really nice people, by the way, and we did reconcile. We had a great, wonderful relationship at the end of their lives. But net is that I never have any recollection of ever being hugged or hearing "I love you" or "I'm proud of you." "We believe in you." Here's some things you might want to know about the opposite gender. Things like just like very basic things. And I quit high school, so you could see I was because of the lack of investment. I ended up quitting high school. My next brother, he quit high school. He died of a heroin overdose, and my two youngest brothers have had way more than their fair share of problems. And so um, I ended up becoming a follower of Jesus at the age of 24. And when I was 25, now I was estranged from my parents. If not for my wife, Patsy, I probably wouldn't have had any contact at all. But my mom and dad invited us to come out to Thanksgiving dinner on when I was 25. And my brother had been off to war. The family had not been together for many years. So we're sitting around a Thanksgiving table, my mom, dad, my three younger brothers, my wife, me, and we're the "God is good, God is great, and we thank you for this food, amen" prayers over dinner, family. And but this day, my dad said, "I would like to pray today." And so he started out. He said, "Lord, Mom and I would just like to say thank you." And then he started blubbering. And he excused himself and went into the master bedroom. And I went in after him. I said, Dad, are you all right? What's the matter? What's going on? He said, I'm okay. I just need a minute. He said, it's just that your mother and I never thought we would ever see our four boys together again in the same room. And I don't know what happened, but I was a new believer, and I understood the gospel, and um, something softened in me that day. And in my heart, I just chose to unilaterally forgive my mom and dad. I
Yeah.
never spoke about it to them. I just forgave them for everything. And there was a tremendous release in that. But of course, I didn't have the education, the research, the experience. Now I've worked with thousands of men one-on-one, in addition to millions
Sure.
of men, with books and stuff like that. But I didn't have any of that. And so net, it took an additional now from 25 all the way to 53, so another 28 years, so 3 decades to work it out with a counselor to get everything worked out. And so I have really sensed the calling for 6 years. I put it off because I just didn't want to throw my parents under the bus, because I really did love them, and I came to understand that they loved me too. And we worked it out. Some people listening, some men, some women, yeah, I mean, your parents may have been so toxic that you could never visualize any kind of reconciliation. I understand that. And I talk about that in the book and what to do about that as well, and setting boundaries, if you need to do that, all those kinds of things. But in my case, I did figure all this out. And I spent 6 years thinking it through how I could do this book in a way that would not throw my parents under the bus, but would also help other men experience the real, lasting, and beautiful changes that are possible when we understand how to solve the problem of childhood wounds. We live in a very in the manosphere. It's common to sort of almost embarrass men for being weak, machoism.
Yeah.
So we often suppress men from dealing with the real issues that are keeping them from making progress forward. And so net, I think we can do in a matter of 3 months with many men what it took 3 decades for me to do. And so that's why I wrote the book. Wow, that was a mouthful.
That's good.
I kind of like that term, manosphere. Is that what
I like that.
manosphere?
Yeah. Yeah, and you said, Patrick, that you felt like when writing the book, and I understand that you don't want to throw your parents under the bus, especially since you reconciled, but you said you really pictured them in the room, and you think that if they were alive, you did the book in such a way that they would not be embarrassed by it, and they would say, "No, that's accurate. That's how that went."
Yeah, I'm not some angry teenager that grew up to be an angry man
Right.
that now is trying to look for a forum or an opportunity to spew out his anger. No, I, I'm fully alive in Jesus. I have been fully healed. That doesn't mean I don't walk with a limp, because
Sure.
I do, and I talk about that in the book too. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to, and think this is important, men, if you're listening, and women too. About 20% of the readers, I think, looks like are women now. So
Yeah.
go figure, because I'm a men's author. I know my lane, but it is, these are
Yeah.
general
Well, no,
principles too.
my wife has said the same thing. She said, but I think it's important for even women to take these resources designed for men so we can understand our husbands and our sons. It's important for us too.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, and by the way, women, if your husband is a broken boy and he's acting out, so if he's, maybe he lashes out, he doesn't know why, maybe he withdraws and pouts, doesn't know why, or maybe he's easily angered, maybe he doesn't feel like people really care about him, personally, maybe he's oversensitive and often misreads what people intend. There are 9 characteristics of broken boys in the book. And, so I encourage you, read the book to help understand. You can read the book for yourself, and then you can also think about presenting this book as a gift to your husband. I just would encourage you, don't give it at him, just because that doesn't work very well. You know that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
So all right,
So
we're going to take our first break. We'll come back because I want you to listen to what Patrick said. So the book is very resourceful, meaning there's things to look at to see, hey, is this what my husband looks like? Or if you're a guy, is this what I look like? There's also a lot of things, and there's a thing in here that I kind of took away from it too. Is it's important to read it as a parent and ask some hard questions about how you parent. That's in here too, and we'll talk more about that when Rick and Bubba University, the podcast, continues right after this.
This is the Rick and Bubba Show. Watch more at blazetv.com/Rick and Bubba.
Rick and Bubba, Rick and Bubba.
Patrick Morley is our guest. The brand new book is called From Broken Boy to Mended Man. It is not just addressing the problem of dysfunctional parents and the wounds that children feel from that. It's also a plan to heal and learn from these things, some actual steps you can take, which is also very important. I don't know about you, Bubba. I don't like a book to keep telling me the problem, but then never talk about the solution.
Well, it's nice if you can go full circle, isn't it?
Right. So this has the solution too. So Patrick, let's talk a little bit. Am I right or wrong on this? Something my wife and I have discussed, and we have, I've looked at the wounds from dysfunctional families from the front row. My parents weren't perfect, but I've told both of them. My dad passed in December, and my mother, we're taking care of her now. And one thing I keep telling them, because I think this is what we all want to know as parents, I said, look, Mom, I know you and Dad didn't do everything right. I got that, but here's what I want you to know. You did the most important thing. I've always known you were proud of me, and I always went to bed feeling like you loved me. I felt safe. And I said, the rest of this stuff, is kind of, you're not going to do everything perfect because you're flawed people, but you got those two right.
Yeah.
And you talk about in the book that those two are very important. And am I right to say this, Patrick? Correct me if not. From what I've viewed, dysfunctional parents, especially dads, seem to hurt and wound males even more than females.
Well, I really am not sure about that. I think that there are a lot of women who have daddy issues. I don't really have good data on that. So
they seem to be able to overcome it better than guys. I don't know why. Maybe because they find a good husband, maybe that kind of helps them deal with that. When I see families, it seems like the daughters are able to overcome it, not in every case, better than the males. I don't know why, but just from my observations.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's certainly possible. Basically, a child needs 4 things: love, structure, roots, and wings. Love, structure, roots, and wings. And when mom and dad, parenting is a privilege. Nobody's perfect, of course, but certainly not me. But when a parent does create the right cocktail of love, structure, not too much, not too little, roots, go deep, and then wings, independence, then the child grows up and would say, well, my parents were affirming, or my parents were encouraging. But what if you can't? And that's what we're dealing with in the book, Seven Negative Parenting Styles. I won't go into them, but I'll just name them. They're all in the book. But passive, absent, permissive, enabling, angry, demanding, and belittling. And so, and you're right about the arc. The arc of the book is important. What Bubba said was very important too. I like full circle books, but here's the thing. Here's the thing, and this is it. This is it. If you're listening, if you're trying to solve the wrong problem, you can only succeed by accident.
Right.
Right.
So
That's
you
true.
actually do have to take time to understand what the problem is, so that you don't now. If you're listening and you have dramatic mood swings and you don't know why, or you can't get rid of the negative voices in your head, or if you've cut yourself off from your family, either physically or emotionally, and you don't understand why that's happening, think ahead 5 or 10 years. If you don't take some intentional steps to make an adjustment to that, why would we think that anything's going to be different 5 or 10 years from now? And then guess what? 5 or 10 years from now, if you keep being prickly and lashing out, you have a very good chance of damaging or even destroying a relationship with a very nice woman, and maybe putting 2 kids, maybe 3 kids on a path to saying, man, I wish, I can't wait to get away from my dad, that kind of a thing. And so it's important, if this is relevant for you, to actually do something about it. And that's why I wrote this book. But of course, a good counselor can also help you as well.
So the point you're making is, before you start thinking about how you're going to fix the way you parent, you got to deal with the problem that happened to you. If you're trying to break a cycle, you can't. You talk about that in the book. You can't break a cycle of dysfunctional family and bad parenting if you don't first realize what happened to you from bad parenting and work on that. Because it looks like to me sometimes that we tend to swing in extremes. Bubba and I talk about the pendulum.
Yeah.
Like if I had an overbearing dad and an overbearing mom, then all of a sudden I have to be careful that I don't parent as a passive parent.
Meaning, I
don't
just turn them out.
I don't do anything.
Go way overboard the other way.
Right.
Yeah. So intergenerational transmission of dysfunction is, well documented in the literature. So you put this into the university, Rick and Bubba University archives.
Yeah.
But I do think, that said, the goal here is, we want to understand the problem so we can make sure we're working on the right solution. But the arc of the book, the first part of the book is called Unraveling, what happened to you. And then the second part is the process of healing. And I talk about the 7 stages of healing. It's a biblical process. It's been around for thousands of years in constant use, and help a man work through these 7 stages. And then the final piece is breaking the cycle for your own wife, your own children, and your friends and the next generations. So so most of it is focused on how to move forward. But I just think that we have spent denial. I'll tell you an interesting story. When I was so I used to race motocross in college, and my parents came to see me race one time.
Patrick, I would never have pictured you as a motocross racer, but go ahead.
Yeah, we
go ahead. You seem much too calm for that.
Right.
Oh my gosh, we need to get to know each other. I mean, I've raced automobiles, jumped out of airplanes. I mean, crazy stuff.
That's
so
crazy.
anyway,
picture that.
Yeah. So, but on this particular time they came to visit me, that happened to be the day that I got into a nasty crash and got flown to the hospital in a helicopter. Well, my mom and dad did not come to see me in the emergency room.
Oh, wow.
And they didn't call me to follow up to see how I was. Well, you would think that would be a memory that would be so difficult that it would literally just completely rip me apart. But here's the thing, guys. Until I was writing the book, I literally had completely blocked that out of my mind. I was in complete and absolute denial. This is how powerful our minds are, men, and this is why we sometimes need a guide like this book or some other guide to help us to work through these things. So if denial is basically emotional amnesia. It's everybody compartmentalizes unpleasant thoughts, but denial is actually an emotional amnesia. We literally can't remember the thing that and this is why we need to have somebody to help us unlock these things.
So you didn't remember that. You completely,
Absolutely.
because that seems such a moment that I'd be like, I'd write songs about it. I would talk about it. But you're saying, do you think that's the human being protecting himself for how sad that really is?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's quite a bit of research on that.
Yeah.
Yes, and so yeah, I mean, we're all trying to preserve our self-image, to the best we can. So, but anyway, a man who's been, suffered childhood wounds. And my parents, theirs were by ignorance, not malice, but maybe yours were by malice.
Right.
Maybe ignorance and malice. But a child that gets wounded, one of the things we do is one of the characteristics we grow up to either be super responsible or especially irresponsible or immature for our age. Mm-hmm. I ended up being the responsible one. I'm not sure why, but so yeah. But the point of that is that. One child grows up trying to prove that their parents were wrong about them. That was me. But then another man grows up and he spends his entire life trying to show that his parents were really right about him.
So true.
You're just like your dad. You'll never amount to anything. And he spends the next 40 years trying to prove that's true.
Patrick, I've got to know this. When you kind of made up with your parents and moved forward, did you ever ask them about not coming to the hospital, and what did they say? I'm just curious because you're down the road now. Did that ever get resolved?
Remember. I'm saying I didn't remember that until I was writing the book. Yeah. Like a year.
Oh, so they already passed. Ago. They'd already passed. Yeah.
It was gone. It was completely. But there were other things that I did talk to them about. And here's the thing I found in my parents. And guys, I think you would probably find this, if you're listening, to be true of your parents. My parents never initiated any reconciliation effort. They never, they just didn't have the skill set, if you will, to do that. But here's the thing. They never resisted any attempt on my part to bring about and talk about an area of our lives that needed to be fixed.
Yeah,
I'll give you probably as good example as any. So, in my early 30s, I have 2 young children, and I'm growing in my faith, and I began to really have a longing, I guess is the right way to put it, to have a more of a relationship with my parents and my dad especially. And so I asked my dad if he would like to go to lunch on his birthday, and he said yes, and we had a really great time. And so we ended up making that an annual tradition. When I was 35, I took him to his birthday lunch. As we were leaving the restaurant, happened to be that our vehicles were parked next to each other. His was a truck. He was a working man, and I had a car. And guys, to this day, I have no idea how all this happened. But as we were saying goodbye, I said, "Dad, could I give you a hug?" I have no idea where that came from. I had no recollection of ever being hugged.
Right.
I said, "Dad, could I hug you?" And men, Rick Bubba, before the words were out of my mouth, he was charging me like a grizzly bear, and he threw his arms around me.
Wow.
And he crushed me. I mean, I was having a hard time breathing, and he let out this deep primordial groan, and it was like,
Wow.
It went on for like 20 or 30 seconds. And then we drew back with our hands on each other's shoulders, and tears were rolling down both of our faces. And then again, I don't know why I said it, but I said, "I love you, Dad." And he said, "I love you too, son." And that was the first time that I'd ever heard the words "I love you."
He just couldn't take the initiative. He couldn't take the initiative.
Exactly, exactly. And so, guys,
Take the
we
initiative.
yeah, we need to lay down our arms, okay, and allow God to heal us to the point where we can be proactive.
We'll come back. We'll finish our conversation. We've got more to cover. The book is called From Broken Boy to Mended Man by Patrick Morley. Be sure and grab this. What a great resource. And we'll continue our conversation when Rick and Bubba University, the podcast, continues right after this. So, Bubba, let's talk about something that's not a fun topic, but it's important, and that is life insurance. Not a lot of fun.
Nope.
Not a lot of fun. But if you're wanting your family to be taken care of, you need to take care of this, but let's simplify it. And it's no simpler than the way ladderlife.com/Rick Bubba goes about it. The folks at Ladder Life, listen to this. It's 100% digital, no doctors, no needles, no paperwork. This number is going to surprise you. If you are applying for $3 million in coverage or less, you're not going to see doctors, needles, or paperwork. You're going to answer a few questions about your health in an application, and then their algorithms are going to work in real time, and they're going to find you some term life insurance at the best price available with insurers that have been vetted out for years on paying what they claim they'll pay at your death. Don't we want to know that those that depend on us are just going to be taken care of if we were to pass before them? The customers are rating them right now 4.8 out of 5 stars on Trustpilot. They made the Forbes Best Life Insurance list. If you would like to find out more, trust your friends Rick and Bubba. Life insurance costs more as you age. Get it done now. Go to ladderlife.com/Rick Bubba. Ladder, that's LADDER life.com/Rick Bubba. Patrick Morley is our guest. His latest book, From Broken Boy to Mended Man, a positive plan to heal your childhood wounds and break the cycle if you were raised in a dysfunctional home, which would be 70 to 80% of American homes now, and you have parents maybe that may have wounded you that you've never dealt with. It gives you, first of all, an assessment guide, a plan to deal with it guide, and then a plan not to break that cycle going forward.
Patrick, let me ask you this, because we all have blind spots in our life, and we're really good at not seeing a lot of blind spots.
Yeah.
If you are a young father, maybe you have a new father or a young father, small children, what is the best way to do some self-analyzation to be sure you're not getting off the page?
A couple of practical things. And by the way, I'm all about the practical. I'm giving men the practical help that they need to get them where they want to go and solve the problems that they're trying to, work through. So, a couple of things. So, when I was again in my early 30s with these two young kids, my wife said to me one day, he said, you are so surly and so irritable and so hard to get along with on Sunday afternoons. She said, why don't you just take that small TV in the kitchen on the counter and go into the master bedroom and leave the family alone for the rest of the day? And okay, so that would be a clue, right?
Right.
As it turned out, I did that, and I'm not sure what all the things I was going through at the time, because I could not articulate the things that I can articulate today. But if you find yourself in that kind of a situation where your wife is sending you very clear messages that something's wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
So you talk about things practical, like children really need structure. And I think that's one of the things that's sadly missing so much in the house today. You're not being domineering by setting up structure. Children need structure. They need discipline. And I know in my life, that was one of the ways I felt like my parents showed me they loved me. They cared how I acted.
Well, that's exactly right. So a lack of structure would mean that, okay, my parents are too permissive and too passive, perhaps. Too much structure might mean they're too demanding.
Right.
All right. So when our children were young, we went up to the top of Whiteside Mountain. We hiked up to the top of Whiteside Mountain near Cashiers, North Carolina, where there is a cliff that plummets 750 feet down to the canyon floor, like straight down. But we were we thought we were good parents. We let our kids walk right up to the edge of the cliff and look over. Well, why would why would we think we're good parents if we did that? Well, because there was this huge guardrail there.
There you
It
go.
was impossible for them to fall off.
A boundary.
And that's what structure does. It gives the children the freedom to know how far they can go without going into danger.
Right.
And so it's very important. And in fact, it's one of the most loving, and you've already said it, it's one of the most loving things a parent can do is to give children clear structure so they know what the rules are, and also they know what the consequences are if they don't obey the rules. It's very helpful. This is part of giving children the not only the structure but the roots that they need to really feel like they're safe, like they know that they have a safe place.
Yeah, I saw this, and I won't give many details because I don't have permission to. But I saw this in a place where I was able to act as a sort of an authoritative figure in a child's life that was in a dysfunctional situation in his home, and of course the child would act out because of this situation. But when he was in my care, I provided structure. I communicated clearly what would be accepted and what would not be accepted. And I wouldn't tolerate disrespect. I wouldn't tolerate not following my instructions. We were going to eat when I said to eat. We were going to play with the boundaries that I said we were going to play in. And I remember getting a call from someone almost apologetically that was connected to the child, wanting to know how things were going. And I said, I haven't had a problem at all. And they were like, really? And I said, no. I said, he's thriving in this. I think that this is probably what's lacking. This child hasn't given me an ounce of trouble today. So they crave it. They crave that. I think it takes a lot of stress off of them, when they don't have any boundaries at all. Yes or no?
Yeah, I think it's very stressful not to know what the rules are. So every parent has the privilege, but also the responsibility to help children do things that they can't do for themselves. Enabling, however, is doing for children what they can or should be doing for themselves,
Right.
or not holding them responsible for doing things that they shouldn't do. And so there have been lots of terms for this, helicopter parenting and so forth, a lot of terms for that with a certain segment of young people today. And it's true that many children are growing up with enabling parents. And guess what? The wounds that come from enabling your child can be just as deep as the wounds that can come from being toxic and mean-spirited with your child.
Yeah, no doubt.
So let me ask you this: you mentioned the giving them wings. Expand on that just a little bit.
Well, this is independence, and so we dropped our daughter off at a small college. Well, I'll tell you which one it was because you would know it, Samford University.
Sure. Yeah. Just over the hill from us. Yeah.
Which is known as much for forging character as it is for its education. That's why we picked it, and our daughter picked it. And the director of counseling at the time took us the freshman parents aside and gave us a list of 7 different things that they were trying to build into the character of the students, like a sense of competency and interpersonal relationships and integrity and so forth. But if you grew up, if your children are growing up in a home that is trying to give the children wings, you're already teaching your children these things. And so it's not that they have to go somewhere to learn them. They have this, you're trying to help them. You've been trying to help them find, or maybe your parents have tried to help you find something or a few things that you could do well, maybe in sports or in intellectual pursuits or the arts, or maybe some other area as well. And so this is what it means to give children wings, is to help them flourish, to thrive, and all the other things, love, structure, and roots. These are all part of they have to be in place too. But then what happens is that the child becomes strong and then is ready for independence. Our granddaughter gets she'll be today on the day this podcast.
Right.
That's her 16th birthday.
Happy birthday.
And she's getting a car. She's
All
getting
right.
a car.
Yeah, sure.
Exciting day.
But her parents have been spent the last 2 years helping her understand everything there is to understand about how to drive a car.
Right.
That's what it means to give children wings.
We'll come back. We'll finish our conversation with Patrick Morley when Rick and Bubba University, the podcast, continues right after this. Now more than ever, Bubba, what an election coming up. Hey, this is a doozy, isn't it? I mean, now more than ever, Blaze Media is so important. You know why? Because right now, most media is deciding what you can and cannot hear. But not with Blaze Media, because when you subscribe to Blaze Media, they're answering to you, the subscriber, and they're not answering to forces that come in and say, here's what you can say, can't say, here's the script for the day. So it'd be a great time to support Blaze Media. The mission there is to set fire to the lies that are out there and kind of bring truth to this fake world. You get our show, you get an hour of it every day, but you also have access to the Blaze Original series. Steve Baker's incredible investigative work has really been something. It's part of it. And, you know, big tech's out there trying to say what you can and can't see and cancel this, but not with Blaze Media. You know, this is a place where you can go and hear people speak freely and bring you the information that you're looking for with no repercussions, a place where viewers can be part of the solution and ensure that that we're not going to be cut off from each other. It's a place to hear information unencumbered. So if you'd like to be part of it, go to blazetv.com and subscribe today. And when you do, use the promo code Bubba to get $20 off your subscription. That's blazetv.com, promo code Bubba for $20 off. Do it today, now more than ever. Patrick Morley is our guest on this edition of Rick and Bubba University, the podcast. The book is From Broken Boy to Mended Man. It's talking about growing up in dysfunctional families, the wounds that may cause, and how not to repeat that going forward as parents.
Yeah.
So, Patrick, let me ask you this question. And if you're in a marriage, say, and you just, here we go, we're going to have children, and one parent comes from a dysfunctional family, the other parent doesn't. And so sometimes, do you have to be careful with things like, well, this is what we're going to do. You mean to tell me y'all didn't do that? How do you handle helping the other parent to break the cycle without being demeaning or putting them on defense?
Yeah. Well, first of all, is understanding that there is dysfunction that has to be dealt with, right? And
Right.
Acknowledging that. If you have a spouse who is not yet willing, willing to acknowledge that they have a problem, it's very, very difficult to make progress in this area. The idea of so in working with men, as you do, if we were to take the marriage problem and put it over here in one stack, and we were to take all of the other problems with which men struggle and put them over here in another stack, in my experience, the marriage problem alone is bigger than all of the other problems
Right.
combined.
Yeah.
Right.
Easily the number one problem that men face is trying to figure out how to make their marriages work as well as they can. Now, here's what I've discovered is that God, in his grace and his loving mercy, will often put a child who grew up in a loving, affirming home together with someone like me. Like my wife basically grew up in this incredible Christian home. But she put, God put her with me who needed help. And so there is some sense in which, and you have to be careful how you hear this, but there is some sense in which my wife provided the mothering that my own mother didn't provide until a point where I was mature enough to have a normal, a normal, more functional kind of relationship.
Yeah, if the person realizes it was dysfunctional, and I think that's the key. The big part of your book is realizing it was dysfunctional, because sometimes if this is all we know, you think it's normal.
Yes, back to those blind spots.
Yeah, those blind spots again. But
you were just a
Or you
kid. I
block
mean,
it
how
out.
would you know? It's not your fault. It's not your fault.
You were a kid. But have you noticed, though, if you're in that kind of a marriage where one is trying to help the other, be careful if someone is aware their parents maybe weren't wonderful. Let them tell you about it. Don't jump on board because you have to be real careful with that. Because I noticed real quick, you'll realize, okay, that's not my place. I just need to sit and listen and help them work through it.
Yeah, I mean, I talk a lot about this in the book: how to have awkward conversations,
right.
how to reconcile relationships, how to set boundaries when reconciliation is not possible. There is not a situation, if you're listening, there's not a situation that you are in that we don't cover in this book. There's help for everybody. Here's the thing. Here it is. It doesn't make any difference how you got into whatever situation that you're in.
Yeah.
The only solution is to disciple your way out. And that's what we're doing in this book, is essentially helping you to disciple your way out.
Yeah, we've got about 4.5 minutes. The bottom line is, and we've talked about this, Bubba, on the show, the only example we're going to see that isn't flawed, and we talk about this a lot in men's ministry, if you want to know how to be a man, what about when God became one? He did it perfectly. The example that God gave us in Jesus really provides the answers we're looking for, and you do guide us there in this book.
Yeah, I've written 23 books now, and all of my books are basically the same book. They're all written with one idea in mind,
Right.
that there's some obstacle that a man is facing to helping him feel fully alive in Jesus. Something is holding him back from feeling fully alive in Jesus, some obstacle, and then I want to help him overcome that obstacle. And so the way we overcome the obstacle, but because of the great love with which he loved us, God, who is rich in mercy, made us alive in Christ. And so he's given us, you and I, Rick and Bubba and Pat, the ministry of reconciliation, making his appeal through us. And so you and I, and you plural, and I, we're out there doing what the Apostle Paul did, and that feeling compelled, compelled to make this message known to as many people as we can. So Jesus Christ is the single greatest and only hope for whatever problem you are struggling with.
Yeah. John 16:33. I say this so that you have peace. In this world you will face tribulation, but always have that joy in your heart, have that peace, that know that whatever it is, I've overcome the world. And that's one of my favorite verses in the Bible, because I've clung to it so many times, because Jesus never says that we should be surprised by tribulation and difficulty. He told us it was part of the fallen world, fallen human experience.
Gonna happen.
Men, if you're listening, Jesus is the visible image of the invisible God. All the fullness of the deity dwells in him in bodily form. He is the exact representation of God's being. Jesus himself said, "He who has seen me has seen the Father." He said, "The Father and I are one." And as has been said here already, Jesus is the perfect example of a man. And so here's the thing, though. Here it is. Watch this. You need a guide to help you. That's why Jesus' strategy for total global conquest, TGC, that's his strategy, total global conquest.
Right.
Think about it. Think about his strategy. He gathered a dozen men around him, and then he built into their lives and said, "Okay, I'm releasing you to go and conquer the world." And here we are today. 2 billion people call him by name as their savior, and it's a phenomenal strategy. That's why I did write the book in such a way that guys can do it. All these reflections and exercises and questions at the end of the chapter. They can do them by themselves, and that's fine if that's where you are in your life. Do it by yourself, but I think you'd also really benefit most by doing it in relationship with some other brothers in a small group, kind of like what Jesus did.
Yeah, and I will go ahead and tell the men, because I know they want to know from you and me, Bubba. We have both looked at the book. It is exactly written the way we learn. It's given us meat in chunks. It doesn't overwhelm us. It's not wordy. It's not asking us to do a bunch of research and homework. It's designed by man For men. So the format of it is something that you will easily be able to use, and the benefits will be great.
Patrick, it's a great book. I know it's going to assist a lot of people.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier you'd written 23 books. Just looking ahead here, what's 24? What topics are you looking at down the road?
Well, I have 6 books I only write one at a time, but I have 6 books I'm researching right now. I'm very interested in the inner life, the care and feeding of a man's soul, that whole kind of an idea. I'm also I have a PhD even in this stuff and in making effective decisions, and I see decision making, especially among men in their 20s and 30s, being a very problematic. Of course, it's problematic for everybody making difficult decisions, but I really sense a book on making extremely difficult decisions coming pretty soon, and a few others as well. But those are the kind of the big chunky things there.
I like it.
Yeah, we'll look forward to that. The book is called From Broken Boy to Mended Man by Patrick Morley. Pick it up wherever you get books. And thank you, Patrick, and thanks to each and every one of you for being with us on this edition of Rick and Bubba University, the podcast.